Welcome to Dr. PC Verma Economics YouTube class. In this class, we will learn Solow model of economic growth. This Solow model is most important model because it is in the whole world being taught by undergraduate students. Why? Because it tells us so many answers regarding the economic growth differential between developed country and underdeveloped country. What is the steady rate of growth of capital? What is the use of innovations? Many things which were in the microeconomics theory and in macroeconomics there is many development in recent years. We all know the history of economic growth model is not so old. In fact, there was theory, economic theory since Adam Smith, Marx, and Keynes. And in fact, the three people, three persons, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes, they are treated as original thinkers, no matter whether it is accepted by all or not. But these three, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes, if we have to say that who are the three persons of original thinkers in economics, so we will start from Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes. There was development of economics, general economics, which is treated as microeconomics. Then there was a development of welfare economics, which were also run by the economists like Adam Smith, Alfred Marshall, A.C. Pigou, in American economics, Samuelson, British economist, Hicks, Sitowski, Caddo, all the development related to welfare economics. There is growth of development model or economic growth model, in fact, during war period. We all know that First World War and Second World War. In the First World War there was a destruction, but in Second World War there were great destructions, and that destructions were in Germany, were in Japan, and that you may say that everything at the zero level. That is the starting point of any economy. After the end of Second World War, there was a great damage to Japan, and that great damage to Japan tells the story that the economy is at zero level, and thereafter it has increased to fastly. Same was the case with Germany. After Second World War, its level reached to the zero level. There is destructions, damages, all infrastructures, all buildings, industries, railways, ports. So they were not poor, but they came to the state of a poor economy. And USA in the Second World War, it became the winner, and there was no such damage of those institutions, infrastructures in the USA. And therefore, in the USA, there is a growth rate of 2%. And about 100 years, about that rate continuously 30 years, 2%, 2.5%. But same period, after 1945 to recent time, if we see the growth rate of China, that was in 1948, it was also a starting point, and it was also one of the underdeveloped countries like India. But what is the reason that there is a increase in the growth rate very fastly? And on an average, China grows at 7 to 10%. On an average, Japan growth rate is very high. Germany growth rate is very high, which were damaged to zero level in the Second World War. So there is some growth process which is hidden, which is not explained by economic theory, microeconomics, macroeconomics. And in the 90s, we all know that there was a period of Great Depression, and the whole world, capitalist world, were engaged in solution of the recession, solution of the Great Depression. And growth was not the issue. But in the same process, that there was economist, Mr. Roy F. Harrod. Roy F. Harrod was a student of John Maynard Keynes. We all are aware that John Maynard Keynes had written so many books, but the most influential international level book considered in 1936, that was the General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. In that book, he said that there is no diagram in my book, but there is one diagram, that is of saving and investment. And that saving and investment diagram is not of Keynes, it is the diagram of Harrod, who is my student. He said it is written in the preface of General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. When I was a student, my teacher told this, and we consulted that book. Really we found that in General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, Keynes had given no diagram. Only one diagram is in that book, that is saving and investment diagram, and Keynes has written that that diagram is not mine but of Harrod. So Harrod used Keynesian saving and investment in developing a model to find out that what is the cause of long-term growth. What is the growth model for long-term growth? And in 1939, Harrod model was developed. And in the same field, independently, Yves Domer developed a model, Domer model, that is in 1946. So we can say that the perfect growth model emerged in 1939. 1939 is a period when there was a breakdown of empire, and British Empire was also crumbling gradually. Ottoman Empire, British Empire, French Empire, German Empire, Russian Empire, Portuguese Empire, Spanish Empire, all those empires were gradually converting, shrinking to a nation. And in this process of development of many nations, emergence of many nations, and it was uh, at a greater speed in the 1940, 1945 and thereafter. And therefore, in 1939, Roy F. Harrod independently developed growth model based upon saving and investment mechanism and other variables which he has taken as the warranted rate of growth, actual rate of growth, and natural rate of growth. And similarly, in 1946, Alfred Domer developed a growth model, and that is similar to Harrod model. In many respects, there is some thin line of differences. So, in the growth model development, you will see that Harrod-Dover model is used, and at many places, Harrod model is used. But Harrod-Dover model became very popular because of its suggestion that there is no natural reason for an economy to have balanced growth. Harrod-Dover model is a Keynesian model of economic growth, and it is used in development economics. It is on the basis of Harrod-Dover model, the whole world, it is being taught that actual growth is the real rate of increase in a country's GDP per year. And thereafter, GDP term became very popular. But we all know that in economics, there is no full stop. Indefinitely, it is being developed, and new things will be added, old things will be discarded, improved, rearranged, or a new innovation will come before us that we will examine. What we want to say that it is the demerits of Harrod-Dover model. It is the demerits of Harrod-Dover model that has given birth of three models. Number one, Solow model. Number two, Candor model. And number three, Mr. John Robinson model. It is also interesting to know that Mr. John Robinson and Mr. Roy F. Harrod both were students of John Maynard Keynes. If you see the General Theory of Employment, Trust and Money preface, then you will see there in the last paragraph, John Keynes has written that this book is completed with the help of proofreading, editing by Harrod, by Mr. John Robinson, my students. So, student Harrod became the internationally famous Harrod model, growth model. Mr. John Robinson is also famous for many modern theory in our economics. And she criticized Harrod model and developed his model. Candor criticized developed the model. Solow criticized Harrod model and then developed his own model, exogenous growth model. Why I talked about all these things in the background? Because I wanted that you must read criticism of Harrod model and then start reading Solow model, reading Cador model, reading Mr. John Robinson model. All the problems which were created by Harrod model in conceptual way, in using its way of presentation, where it is being criticized, that question is answered by Solow, Cador, Mr. John Robinson. So out of the defects, demerits, incompleteness of Harrod model, Harrod model, Keynesian Harrod model, there is emergence of three growth models in the development growth economics, and that was Solow model, Cador model, Mr. John Robinson model. Solow model has certain specific quality, properties, constituents, which made it popular in the all countries of the world in undergraduate classes being taught. Most of the textbook has been revised, and when the Solow model were added to it, and the process of development of growth economics, growth model continued till today, and many of them received Nobel Prize in economics, which had developed some portion of the Solow model later on, adding more variables in it. So we have seen that Robert Merton's Solow growth model, it came into the economics of growth in 1956. So see, 1939, Harrod model was in 1939 and Domer model in 1946. So after 1939, it was in 1956 that Solow model came into light. It is also interesting that Robert Merton Solow was developing a model independently, and Trevor Swan also developing independently the model. And as Harrod coincides, similarly, 1956 growth model of Solow, and in the same 1956 growth model of Swan developed. So when you have to write Solow model or you have to write Solow-Swan model, both are same, though developed independently in 1956. And this is a coincidence. This is a coincidence in economics. You might recall, monopolistic competition appeared, and the same year, economics of imperfect competition book appeared in the world. And so, both are in the same year, but independently developed. Likewise, Harrod model came in 1939, Dover model came independently in 1946, but both coincide in their mainstream and developed as Harrod-Dover model, Solow-Swan model, and this is important to know that Solow, we are concentrating on Solow model. So Solow was born August 23, 1924. He was an American economist whose work on the theory of economic growth culminated in the exogenous growth model, named after him as the Solow growth model. It is also known as Solow Swan model, economic model of long-run economic growth set within the framework of neoclassical economics. Today, many growth models are under neoclassical economics, neoclassical growth model, and one of them, Solow Swan model, is very popular. What are the features of this model? Number one, the growth model was developed independently by Robert Merton Solow and Trevor Swan in 1956. Number two, mathematically, the Solow-Swan model is a non-linear system consisting a single ordinary differential equation that models the evolution of per capita stock of capital. Solow model, number three, Solow model superseded Keynesian Harrod-Domer model. So when we see that there are many features of Solow model, and the third feature is Solow model superseded the Keynesian Harrod-Domer model. We have been discussing the different features of the Solow model, and that feature we have seen the third feature, and now fourth feature. The Solow model attempts to explain long-run economic growth by looking at capital accumulation. We all know that the capital accumulation is the basis of increase in growth rate, and it is in fact capital. We all know what is capital. Capital is that part of wealth which is used for increasing more wealth. And what is investment? Investment is that part of capital which is used to increase the size of capital. If capital is K, then delta capital is investment. K is equal to capital, delta K is equal to investment. So investment is most important instrument in the growth model, and capital accumulation, labor or population growth, and increase in productivity, commonly referred to as technological progress. When we proceed to discuss the growth model, then these terms will help us, because we have seen the features that labor is a term which is used in the model. In fact, labor represents population growth. Capital accumulation, it showed investment, positive investment, and increase in the capital accumulation growth rate. There is a law of motion. There is a law of motion of capital growth. And the technological progress, the term technological progress in Solow model will represent productivity, increase in productivity. If there is a change in technology, if there is a positive technological progress, there must be change in the factor productivity. That is also termed as total factor productivity, TFP. Factor productivity most important. And in fact, the labor productivity, capital productivity, productivity of any factors of production taken into consideration, if there is increase in the productivity, that is termed as technological progress. Then the fifth feature of the Solow growth model, then when we analyze growth model, we take the framework of any growth model, we select one production function. If we take the production function, everything according to that production function will be taken as input and its parameters. Solow model has used Cobb type production function, and it is said that using the Cobb type of production function, the Solow model, which enables the model to make contact with microeconomics. So this reflects that growth model is a macroeconomics and that has connection with the microeconomics, that it will give the better result, because in fact we live in microeconomics as individual and macroeconomics as aggregate. So this is one of the best feature, and therefore this Solow model even today in USA, in European Union University, there are many researches still carried on the basis of Cobb production function, and that is being used by Solow in Solow model. Number 6 feature, Solow model is a set in continuous time world. Solow model is set in a continuous time world with no government. With no government or no international treaty. This is American economist, and we all know that American economists are not in a favor of interference by the government. They have developed their economic model where there is no model of government intervention. American economists believe in free economy, and therefore free trade economy. And no international trade, it means autarky. What is autarky? That there is a equilibrium in production, equilibrium in consumption, there is simultaneous increase in production, there is simultaneous economy attains consumption equilibrium, production equilibrium, both. Then this point is known as autarky. So this model starts from the autarky, and therefore in Solow model you will see the starting point is 0. Suppose the starting point of L in bracket 0. The starting point of capital K in bracket 0. The starting point of ideas, technology, invention A, that is in bracket A, capital A in bracket 0. So when we will develop this model, we will use this feature, and everywhere the starting point of labor is 0, starting point of capital is 0, starting point of idea is 0. And therefore, in Solow model, there is no use of international trade, no government in the model. features of Solow model is the basis of further study, further learning in Solow model, development, equations, and other things related to it. So features, seventh feature which we see here on the board, a single good output is produced using two factors of production, L and capital and labor in an aggregate production function. So Cobb production function, as we see, it is used by Solow model in its development of growth model, and a single good output is produced using two factors of production, labor and capital, in an aggregate production function in the Solow model. Number 8th feature, the Solow growth model satisfies the Inada conditions. Inada conditions is satisfied by the Solow growth model. 9th feature, that the elasticity of substitution in the factors of production, elasticity of substitution must be asymptotically equal to 1. This is called Inada condition. Inada condition implies that the elasticity of substitution must be asymptotically equal to 1. We all know that in Cobb-Deluxe production function also, if you take Q is equal to lambda L to the power alpha K to the power beta, then alpha plus beta are the elasticity of capital and labor. Alpha plus beta is equal to 1. The significance of that will represent the constant returns to a scale in the long run. 10th feature, that all factors of production are fully employed, and the initial condition is related to Solow model, that the initial value, idea A, knowledge A, idea A is equal to 0, K capital is equal to 0, labor equal to 0. So a start initial, when we proceed, initial case is always equal to value of factors of production equal to 0. So this is the case of full employment assumption. All factors of production are fully implied in this situation of discussing Solow model. We have been learning about the features of Solow model, and we find that 11th feature is related to labor augmenting technology. In Solow model, A stands for ideas, knowledge, or knowledge is also known as here labor augmenting technology or knowledge, that is represented in Solow model by capital A. Capital A into L. If we write this AL, it means it is called effective labor. In the analysis of Solow model, everywhere you will write, everywhere you will read effective labor. Effective labor. What is effective labor? That is A into L represents effective labor. Then comes the number of workers, labor as well as technology grows exogenously at the rates a small n and a small g. The stock of capital depreciates over time. Most of the American economists say that capital rusts. Here rust stands for depreciation. The stock of capital depreciates at a time at a constant rate. And this Greek letter delta is used by so many economists, but some of the economists also use D, that is the Roman. It is just a practice of the American economists to use Greek letters, and it is the usual practice of Indian economist textbook writers to use Roman alphabet. So a small d stands for depreciation and delta stands for depreciation. Both are same, used by different writers. But when we say about the original Solow Swan model, then everywhere depreciation stands for delta. And the last point is related to curves, which we will analyze in Solow model, that how does it operates in the economy. Curves in Solow model. First curve is related to depreciation. Second curve is related to Solow model, output growth. Third is related to investment. Here the equation that capital S stands for volume of saving, and capital and a small s stands for saving rate. A small s into y will be equal to saving, and saving is equal to investment. That is the Keynesian framework. Saving stands for volume of saving and rate of saving. A small s rate of saving, capital S volume of saving. A small s into y will be equal to s, and s is equal to I. And the last diagram is shown here about the golden rule for level of capital. We all know that in economics, when growth models are discussed, then the final target is maximization of consumption. In the diagram I have shown that maximization of consumption is called as proxy for welfare, and it is known as golden rule for level of capital, where there is maximization of consumption with respect to saving, and saving, that is investment that is capital formation, capital accumulation. So look there at 0 point and at 100 point. This is called consumption curve. At 0 level, 0 consumption, and at 100% again, total amount of capital will be consumed. But the maximization of consumption is taken as the basis for the drawing a tangent to the output per worker curve, that is Solow model curve, at point E, and therefore this is called maximization of consumption as a proxy for welfare. This is all about the beginning of Solow model. We will discuss one by one everything on the diagram and separately to give you the full conception of Solow model. This is the features of Solow model that we have discussed. Thank you. Watch it again.